Samuel Hartley woke before the sun most days. Long before the sky even began to hint at morning, he would step out onto the back porch of his farmhouse, the wood boards cool under his boots, and look out over the fields that stretched far toward the horizon. The land had belonged to his family for 3 generations, and Samuel could still remember the stories his grandfather used to tell, how every fence post was hammered by hand, every seed planted with patience, and every harvest gathered with a mix of sweat and grateful pride. The farm was more than a job for Samuel. It was a piece of his identity, a part of his history, something woven into his heart. Yet, in recent years, something had shifted. The rains that once came in gentle, predictable patterns had become scarce. The soil that had always been fertile now seemed tired, as if the land itself was struggling. The crops didn't grow the way they used to. Each time Samuel walked through the fields, he would bend down and let the dry earth crumble through his fingers. He tried different seeds, different planting methods, different watering schedules. Each attempt brought only small improvements, never enough. Money grew tighter each season. At the kitchen table, Samuel would spread out bills and notices, writing numbers in columns and trying to make them match. His wife Emma would sit opposite him, sometimes speaking softly, sometimes just watching him with quiet concern. She had always believed that where there is love and work, there is always a way. Yet even she could see that this time the problem was not small. Their 2 children, Lily and Henry, could feel the change too, even though their parents tried to shield them. Children always notice when the house feels heavier. Still, Samuel refused to give up easily. Every morning he worked the fields, fixed worn tools, checked the grain bins, oiled the tractor, replaced broken fence rails, and did 100 other chores that came with farming. He was a man who believed that effort and patience solved everything. But as the months went by, the letters from the bank became more frequent. First, they were reminders, then notices of late payment. Eventually, they became warnings that the farm could be taken away. Samuel would fold these letters neatly and hide them beneath piles of old magazines on the shelf, though he knew exactly where they were. The final notice came on a warm afternoon, when the sun was shining in a way that made the fields look healthy and full of promise. A sheriff's deputy drove up the dusty road and parked near the barn. Samuel saw the car from inside and felt his chest tighten. He met the deputy outside, and the deputy, who seemed uncomfortable, explained that this was the last notice. The papers were taped to the door. Samuel nodded, thanked the man, and watched him leave. He stood there for a while, staring at the paper, fluttering gently in the breeze. Inside the house, he tried to pretend everything was all right. He didn't say anything at first. He helped Emma prepare dinner. They sat at the table with the children and talked about school and chores and little daily things. But Samuel's voice felt thinner, as if each word took effort. Later that evening, when the children were asleep, he finally told Emma. Her face did not break, though her eyes grew soft and wet. She moved her chair closer to his and placed her hand on his. They sat like that for a long time. Samuel felt responsible. The farm had always been his duty. His grandfather passed it to his father, and his father to him. The stories of the land lived in his memories. How his grandfather once planted seeds during a year of strong storms. How his father once rebuilt the barn after a lightning strike damaged its roof. They had faced challenges too, and they had overcome them. Samuel wondered why he could not do the same. Was he doing something wrong? Was he not working hard enough? These thoughts followed him when he lay in bed, unable to sleep. They followed him into the early mornings, into the fields, into every quiet moment. Despite the stress, Samuel continued with his routines. He repaired the tractor one more time. He checked the irrigation system again. He woke early and walked through the crops, touching the leaves gently as though offering comfort. He talked to his livestock in a soft voice. He tried to keep hope alive because letting it fade felt like letting the land fade with it. In the nearby town, neighbors noticed the struggle, though few said anything directly. Small-town life meant everyone knew everyone, but it also meant people tried not to pry. Some gave sympathetic looks. Some offered small favors, like dropping off an extra bag of feed or offering to help mend a fence. Samuel appreciated these things even when he felt embarrassed to accept them. Emma quietly took extra hours sewing clothes for neighbors and repairing quilts. She always smiled when someone thanked her, but Samuel could see how tired she became. She tried to hide it just as he tried to hide his worry. They were trying to protect one another, both carrying emotional weight, trying not to add to the other's burden. One evening, Lily asked a question that made both parents pause. She had noticed her parents whispering late at night. She had noticed envelopes being tucked away. She had noticed the worry in their eyes. "Are we going to move away?" she asked. Samuel knelt beside her and smoothed her hair. He told her everything would be all right. He believed it when he said it, or at least he wanted to believe it. He wanted his children to grow up with the sound of wind in the crops, the scent of warm earth, the sight of fireflies over the pasture at dusk. He wanted them to know the same peace he had known growing up here. He wanted them to feel the same connection he felt every time he stood in the field and looked toward the horizon. Days passed slowly. The deadline from the bank approached. Samuel reached out to loan officers, wrote appeal letters, and filled out forms. Some people were polite, some hurried. Some simply said there was nothing they could do. Samuel was respectful in every conversation, though each time he hung up the phone it felt like placing another stone inside his chest. Still, he refused to let the farm appear abandoned. He continued working even when there seemed no reason to. He cleaned the barn floor until it shone. He painted the fence posts white again. He trimmed the hedges near the path the way his grandfather once showed him. He did these things because the land had been cared for by hands that came before him. To neglect it felt like giving up on them too. One night after a long day of repairs, Samuel walked out to the edge of the property. The sun had just set, leaving a soft glow in the sky. Fireflies hovered near the tall grass. The evening breeze was gentle. He closed his eyes and remembered being a child, riding on his father's shoulders in these same fields, feeling tall and safe. He remembered harvesting corn with his grandfather, who told him that land is like a living friend. It gives when treated kindly, and it rests when it must. Samuel wondered if the land was simply resting now, waiting for something he could not see yet. Though he did not know it then, help was already on its way. Somewhere beyond the quiet hills and the dusty road leading to his farm, a stranger was making travel plans, a man he had never met before. Someone whose life had been shaped by a very different kind of service was going to step onto his land soon enough. One conversation, one meeting, one unexpected turn of events was waiting just ahead. Samuel could not see it. He could not predict it, but life often moves that way, quietly preparing answers even while we feel lost. For now, Samuel simply breathed in the cool evening air, standing on the land that held his history, unaware that hope was closer than it seemed. A few days after Samuel received the final notice, life on the farm continued with its slow, steady rhythm. Even though the pressure of losing the land weighed heavily on his mind, he woke early, did his chores, and kept moving. The routine helped him stay grounded. It gave him something to hold on to. But on this particular morning, there was a quiet heaviness in the air, as if the world was holding its breath. In the nearby town, people were preparing for a small ceremony in the community park. It was an event to honor retired service members, something the town did every year. It was not a large event, just a gathering of families, a few speeches, and a table of refreshments made by volunteers. Samuel had planned to attend, but with everything happening, he considered staying home. Still, Emma gently encouraged him to go. She believed that even small moments away from the farm might help him feel less alone. Samuel agreed and drove into town in his old pickup truck. Among the people attending the ceremony was a man named Michael Rivera. Michael had once served as a tomb guard at the tomb of the unknown soldier. It was a role known for discipline, respect, and quiet dedication. Michael had spent years standing in silent honor for those who were never identified yet never forgotten. After his service, he carried those values with him. He walked gently, spoke thoughtfully, and listened deeply. He had come to the ceremony because he believed in honoring connections, both past and present. Michael noticed Samuel from across the field. Something in Samuel's posture, the way he stood slightly apart with his hands loosely clasped, caught his eye. Michael had learned to read people through small details, subtle signs of worry, pride, or quiet endurance. He walked over and introduced himself with a warm smile. Samuel returned the greeting politely. Their conversation began simply, as many do. The weather, the crops, the beauty of the open land. But as they talked, Michael sensed the weight Samuel was carrying. Samuel did not explain everything in detail, but his voice had a tired softness to it. His eyes held the kind of quiet that comes from trying very hard for a very long time. Michael asked about the farm, and Samuel explained that it had been in his family for generations. He spoke of his grandfather and father with a gentle respect. He spoke of the land as if it were alive, something deserving of care. Michael listened carefully, appreciating the sincerity in Samuel's words. He could tell that this was a man who did not ask for pity or help easily. Then Samuel mentioned the difficulties, though not in dramatic words. He talked about the drought, the soil that no longer produced well, the repairs that never seemed to end, and the letters from the bank. Michael did not interrupt. He let the silence hold the truth between them. When Samuel finished, he shrugged slightly, as if trying to make his burden seem smaller. Michael paused for a moment before speaking. He asked a simple question. "Did your family have military service?" Samuel nodded. He told Michael that his grandfather had served many years ago in a conflict overseas. He did not know all the details, only some stories that had been passed down and a few medals kept in a wooden box in the farmhouse. Samuel had always admired his grandfather's courage, but he never thought it had anything to do with the present. Michael's expression changed softly. He asked Samuel if he would be open to sharing the medals or any official documents. Samuel agreed, though he did not yet understand why. After the ceremony ended, Michael followed him back to the farm. The drive was quiet, with golden fields stretching on both sides and the wind rolling through the tall grass like a slow wave. When they arrived, Samuel invited Michael inside. Emma greeted them kindly, offering water and a small plate of bread she had just baked. The children peeked from the hallway, curious about the visitor. Michael smiled at them, and they smiled back shyly. Samuel went to a small wooden chest in the living room. It was old, the corners slightly worn from time. Inside were a few medals, a photograph of his grandfather in uniform, and some documents that had yellowed with age. Samuel handed the items to Michael gently, as though passing something sacred. Michael examined the medals with deep respect. He recognized the symbols and what they represented. He understood that Samuel's grandfather had not only served, but had been honored for his courage and dedication. Michael looked up at Samuel with thoughtful eyes. Then he said something that Samuel did not expect. He explained that there were programs designed to support families of decorated veterans, especially those who worked in agriculture. These programs helped protect land, provide funds for recovery, and support farming operations facing hardship. Samuel felt a flicker of hope, though he tried not to let it grow too quickly. Michael made a phone call, standing just a few steps away in the kitchen. His voice remained steady and calm. He spoke to someone he knew in an organization that helped connect veterans' families with support. The conversation was brief but meaningful. When he hung up, he turned to Samuel and said that there was indeed a possibility. A real one. However, forms needed to be filled, documents needed to be scanned, and certain records needed to be confirmed. It would take time and patience. Samuel agreed without hesitation. He felt something he had not felt in months, someone standing beside him instead of watching from afar. Over the next several days, Michael returned to the farm repeatedly. Sometimes he came with papers and folders, other times with a laptop and phone calls that needed to be made. He helped Samuel gather information, confirm his grandfather's service details, and complete every necessary step. Emma prepared tea and snacks each time, grateful for the presence of someone who did not treat their situation as hopeless. During these visits, Michael also learned more about the farm itself. He listened to Samuel explain how the crops were planted, how the seasons had changed, and how the land responded differently each year. Michael asked thoughtful questions and encouraged Samuel to speak freely. For the first time in a long time, Samuel felt seen, not as a man failing, but as a man fighting for something meaningful. The days were filled with a mixture of work and waiting. While paperwork was processed, Samuel continued tending to the farm. But now his steps felt different. His shoulders did not sag quite as much. There was a quiet strength growing again, something gentle but steady. Emma noticed the difference and felt relief rise softly within her. Even the children seemed lighter, laughing more easily, running across the yard with renewed joy. Meanwhile, Michael stayed in contact with the organization and followed every detail carefully. His sense of duty did not end with his military service. It was part of who he was. He believed deeply in honoring those who served and in supporting the families who carried their legacy. Weeks passed, filled with steady effort. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived. Samuel held it in his hands for a long moment before opening it. Emma stood beside him. Michael was there too. Together they read the words that confirmed everything. The foreclosure would be stopped. The farm would receive financial support, and programs would help restore the land and improve farming conditions. Samuel exhaled softly, as though his lungs had been tight for months. Emma covered her mouth, tears forming in her eyes. Michael smiled warmly, not proud of himself, but grateful to have helped where help was needed. The air in the room felt brighter, lighter, open. This was not just relief. It was revival. And for the first time in a long time, Samuel felt that hope was not a distant light, but something already blooming within reach. The news that the farm was saved spread slowly, like a warm sunrise across the fields. It did not come with loud celebration or big announcements. Instead, it came with quiet smiles, long breaths of relief, and a gentle change in the air. For Samuel, it felt as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders, one he had carried for so long that he had almost forgotten what it felt like to stand tall. The first morning after receiving the letter, Samuel woke before dawn, as he always did. But this time, when he stepped outside, the sky seemed brighter. The fields looked softer. The cool morning air felt kinder on his face. He walked across the land slowly, taking in every detail. The soil that once felt like a reminder of his struggle now felt like a promise of new beginnings. He knelt down and touched the ground gently, letting the earth crumble between his fingers. It felt familiar, like a friend welcoming him home. Emma watched him from the porch, her heart full. She saw the way his shoulders lifted when he breathed. She saw that his steps no longer carried quiet worry. She joined him outside, and they stood together in silence for a long moment. Sometimes words are not needed to share understanding. Their hands found each other easily. A few days later, representatives from the assistance program arrived. They came with friendly voices, notebooks, and genuine interest in helping. They did not speak quickly or in complicated terms. They listened first. They asked Samuel about his crops, his equipment, his challenges, and his hopes for the land. Samuel explained everything with honesty and care. He spoke of the soil conditions, the irrigation systems, and the crop rotation he wanted to try, but never had the means to do. The representatives offered guidance, not judgment. They explained grants and training programs that could help Samuel restore the land. They showed him new techniques to improve soil health and introduced equipment options that could reduce his daily labor. They were respectful of the farm's history, understanding that this land was not just property, it was heritage. Over time, improvements began. A delivery truck brought new farming tools, and Samuel worked with a small team to install updated irrigation lines. The children watched with excitement, running around the edges of the fields while Samuel explained which parts of the system would help the crops grow stronger. Emma recorded some of the moments with an old camera so they could remember how far they had come. Michael continued visiting the farm, though now his presence felt like that of an old friend rather than someone helping with a crisis. Sometimes he came to help work on a section of fence or clear brush from the edge of the property. Other times he simply sat with Samuel on the porch, sharing stories about life, service, and the beauty of quiet perseverance. Their conversations were gentle and honest. Samuel learned about Michael's experiences standing watch in silence, honoring those who could no longer speak for themselves. He learned about the discipline it took, the patience, the respect. Michael learned about the rhythm of farming, the way a farmer must listen to the earth, the weather, and time itself. Both men realized that though their worlds had been different, both required dedication, responsibility, and heart. The farm began to show signs of renewal. Green shoots appeared in fields that had once looked tired. The soil felt richer and held moisture better. Birds returned to rest on the fence posts. The early morning light reflected on the fresh dew, making the fields look almost like they were glowing. Even the old barn looked steadier after Samuel repaired its roof and repainted its doors with the help of a neighbor. The family felt the change too. Lily and Henry started helping more in small ways, carrying buckets of feed or helping Emma with the garden near the house. Emma's laughter became more frequent, soft and natural like it used to be. There were relaxed conversations at the dinner table again. The house felt warm and lived in, not heavy and quiet. One afternoon, Michael and Samuel stood near the pasture watching the sunset. The sky glowed with soft orange and deep pink. The land spread out before them in wide, peaceful lines. Michael turned to Samuel and said that he admired not just the farm, but the heart it took to hold on to it. Samuel nodded, understanding that such appreciation was sincere. He told Michael that he believed their meeting had been guided by something larger than coincidence. Michael simply smiled and said that sometimes life brings people together at exactly the moment they are needed. Weeks turned into months and the farm continued to improve. The crops grew stronger. The new season brought new hope. Samuel found himself planning ahead again, thinking about future harvests and possibilities. The fear that had once followed him like a shadow was gone. In its place was a calm, steady determination. Every once in a while, Samuel would think about the moment when he nearly lost everything. The memory no longer filled him with fear, but with gratitude. He saw that even in the hardest times, life was still moving, still shaping, still creating connections that could lead to new paths. The struggle had not been wasted. It had taught him the strength of endurance, the importance of asking for help, and the power of kindness from unexpected places. One early evening, the family gathered outside for a simple meal. The sky was wide and clear, and the fields danced softly with the wind. Samuel grilled vegetables from the garden and Emma made fresh bread. The children chased each other through the yard, laughing with the kind of joy that feels light and free. Michael was there too, sitting in a chair near the porch. He watched the children play, listened to the soft hum of the land and felt peace. Samuel sat beside him and thanked him again, not just for the call he made, but for seeing him when others did not, for caring when he could have simply walked away. Michael shook his head gently and said that sometimes, when we serve others, we are not just helping them. We are honoring the people who taught us to care in the first place. He explained that his time as a tomb guard taught him that every life carries meaning, every story matters, and every act of kindness holds quiet strength. As the sun lowered and the evening light turned golden, Samuel looked over his land with a heart full of gratitude. He thought of his grandfather and father, of the generations before him who had tended this soil. He thought of the struggle and how close he had come to losing everything. He thought of Michael's steady presence, a reminder that compassion can change the course of a life. The farm was not just saved. It was renewed. The land breathed again, and so did Samuel. He knew that challenges would still come. Life would still have storms and dry seasons, but now he faced the future with confidence, supported by faith, community, and friendship. The fields stretched toward the horizon, open and full of promise. And in the quiet of the evening, with the wind brushing gently across the crops, Samuel felt something deep and certain. Hope had returned, and it was here to stay.